Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me, as always, we have Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Good evening.
Evening.
It's been a couple of weeks since we last recorded a podcast, so we've got a few things to catch up with. Plenty of Swans news to discuss, including the future of Steve Cooper, potential new signings, and of course, the lovely new kit, which everybody seems to adore. But before we get to any Swansea chat, we're just going to start off by looking back at the Euros, which has now, of course, ended since Wales were knocked out. The tournament is irrelevant from now on, regardless of who wins it. So we'll just discuss it as a whole now. Steve, let's talk about Wales. Got through to the last 16, but then got knocked out by Denmark. How do you think this tournament is going to be remembered on the whole?
Solid. We did a good job to get out of the group. No one can sort of dispute that, really. I mean, especially when you look at we finished above Switzerland, who did very well against France the other night and obviously knocked them out. But I think it's hard not to be disappointed by the way that we played against Denmark, if I'm honest. I mean, we were just really poor after those first 10 to 15 minutes. I think that we did come up against a good side. I wouldn't dispute that. But I just felt from the moment, really, that they made that little switch with Christensen and moved him a little bit further up to stop us from playing. We just looked completely out of our depth. And it was really disappointing because I did feel it was a chance, like a game that we had a chance of progressing from. But in the end, we got absolutely battered. There's no other way of describing it. I do think that the ref should be looked at, not in terms of the fact that he's cost us a place, but I think in general he had a poor game as well. But we can only blame ourselves. Some of the goals we give away, especially the Nico Williams clearance for the second goal, for example, was shocking. So it is disappointing, really. But at the end of the day, you can't say we've had a bad tournament because we did get out of what was a difficult group. So it's pleasing on that front, but like I said, it's just never nice to take a battering, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, Matt, I think everybody was very positive after the group stage, getting out of the group. The win against Turkey was obviously amazing, finishing second. But do you think the nature of the defeat to Denmark has kind of clouded the whole thing slightly?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't think anyone was defeatist going into the Denmark game, but on reflection, maybe we were brought down to earth with a bang, because I thought, okay, of the three realistic options of who we were going to play against, Denmark were probably going to be the toughest, but at the same time, I thought it was a winnable game. I did, and we just weren't at the races at all. I didn't feel like we could have, seriously hurt them. Yeah, a couple of decisions went against us, and I get that, but our performance was just, after about whatever the 15th minute or so, and I just felt like they got a stranglehold in the game. The first goal knocked the stuffing out of us, so we maybe then tried to force the issue perhaps and come unstuck because they were better at everything in the day, and it was really disappointing. And it's hard because when we got through the group, people were talking maybe we're looking at another Euro 2016. It's hard not to get caught up in the moment, but we only actually won one game in this tournament.
Do you think we went overboard after? Because I'll be honest, I didn't get caught up in that really. I was pretty chuffed just to get out of the group, and I was like you. I was a lot less confident once we drew Denmark rather than Russia or Finland. But I mean, did we were we still living in 2016 and kind of got carried away with the dreams of a repeat of things like Lille again? Do you think?
Yeah, because I think the Turkey game was excellent. I thought we should have scored more. It was probably the closest thing to the Russia game from the last Euros, where it was a complete team performance in that game. And yeah, I do think there was a moment there where you thought, and you had the pundit saying it as well, that Wales, you keep an eye out for Wales because they've got a team spirit that's unrivaled and it takes them places. And we do. I get that. We do have this great team spirit, this unity, which the sum of our parts is not, as the team unit is more important to us. And I think once you get through the group and it's you're into the knockout football, then we knew obviously going into the Italy game that it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of jeopardy on the game, and it was just a case of where we would finish. But it was just great to feel like, well, anything can happen. These are the three teams we could get. So before we knew we were going to have Denmark, we had that day in between where we thought, well, who knows? Who we going to get, whatever. And it just felt a little bit like we got a bit ahead of ourselves, and we maybe thought then we could have done more than we actually really could have done. I thought at that point then, what we'd actually seen on the pitch was one good performance, one comfortable defeat, and one that should have been a defeat. And that's the reality of it. And it's the wildest thing is everyone tipped Turkey to be, the wild card, the one everyone should watch out for. So, we were all made to look like fools at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was weird that when people started calling them dark horses for the tournament, that was a bit weird. But I did expect a lot more from Turkey than what they actually gave. I think you said it all really, boys. I think it's a successful tournament just on the basis that we've got out to a group stage, which included three teams in the top 30 of the FIFA rankings. And Switzerland and Italy are obviously very good teams, even if Turkey didn't turn up. But even though I think the tournament as a whole has to be regarded as a success in the circumstances, the way we went out to Denmark was really disappointing, wasn't it? The scoreline and the nature of the performance, I just felt like we lost our heads, really. The occasion just looked like way too much for too many of our players, and even experienced players just lost their heads and lost their cool. And if we just lost 2-0 to Denmark, I just said that is a respectable scoreline. We've lost 2-0 to a very good team there, a team which you would expect to beat Wales most games. I think it's fair to say they beat us quite convincingly 2 years ago in the Nations League. But to lose 4-0 in any game isn't great, and I think it's fair to say that we crumbled under the pressure really in that match, and it wasn't a nice experience watching that. I think it's fair to say. Steve, looking back at the performances over the 4 games, who were the players or the areas of the team then for you which stood out in a positive way, and the areas where we probably need to look at improving over the coming years as we look to qualify for the World Cup in Qatar and look ahead, I guess, to the post Bale and Ramsey era.
So Danny Ward did really well. I wasn't really sure if he should be the number one or if it should be Hennessy. I thought it was a close run thing, but I've got to say that he really did excel. So that's a big plus point. I thought Kiefer Moore did really well. And he proved why he should be in the team. I think I was actually a little bit surprised that he played as much as he did, because in the warm-up games he didn't. So that was good. I mean, obviously there were moments from Bale and Ramsey. I mean, particularly the Ramsey goal against Turkey. I mean, that was sublime. Don't think Bale was at his best in general. There were some moments from him, but not amazing. I think I was a little bit concerned about Joe Allen. Really, I didn't think he maybe shone in the way that we would have liked. I know he's had a lot of injury issues, hasn't he? So maybe, I don't know, he's taken a bit of time to get up to speed, but I mean, I do look at that midfield, and it does worry me a little bit. Like for the longer term future, I think Joe Morel came in and did well, but we're asking a player here who's not really played a lot of football to come in, and I don't really see many players coming through. There's obviously Ampadu, but he didn't get a lot of minutes, did he? I thought Dan James had a few decent moments, but maybe wasn't amazing in every game. I think we, to be fair, we do have some reasonable depth now, but I do look at that centre midfield area, and that is a bit of a weakness, or it's going to become a weakness, I think. So I'm hoping we are going to see 1 or 2 players come through there, really, because I think, especially where, I think if we're honest, we're likely to lose Bale, Ramsey and Allen all around the same time. I mean, I know people are talking about the last of the World Cup. I'm pretty sure of that. But I think with the next Euros only being 3 years away, I'm pretty sure that the three of them will still be around for that and will probably retire at the same time after that tournament. So I think we're okay for now, but we definitely are lacking a little bit in that centre midfield area. And I think that is going to be an area for concern, really, over the near future.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I thought we struggled in midfield in pretty much in every game apart from Turkey, where the Turks were just so open. I mean, you couldn't. They gifted us so much space in midfield that it would have been ridiculous if we hadn't performed well in that match. But yeah, I think Joe Morel's had a good tournament, considering that he barely played for Luton over the season. I think he's come in and sort of established himself now as the number one midfielder probably, but I still think he struggled in quite a few games. I agree 100% with you on Alan. I thought Alan looked like the injury had taken its toll on him. It was as if his brain was still working as sharply as usual, but just his body couldn't keep up. Which was the concern really. Just looked like he wasn't really that the Joe Allen of old, unfortunately, and we've always relied so heavily on him in midfield, like ridiculously so. When he's not fully fit and on his game, then obviously it's going to have an impact on our game. I felt sorry for Ampadu, I'll be honest, because I think probably wasn't match fit going into the Euros. The match against Albania in the warm-up, he didn't look up to speed, really. And that was after a disappointing season with Sheffield United, albeit one where apparently he was much better in the second half of the season. But I think for the last few years we've been looking at Ampadu and thinking, oh yeah, he'll be ready for the Euros. He'll be ready to really explode when it comes to Euro 2020. And just things haven't quite gone his way, and the build up to the tournament didn't really go his way. And then of course he had the red card against Italy and didn't get his chance. And I'd have liked to have seen him play against Denmark had he not been suspended, unfortunately. But that didn't happen. But I think we've got a few kind of raw materials to work with in midfield, but it does need quite a bit of work, and that's the main area I think that we need to look at going forward. But just in general, I think we saw a lot of players in this tournament who, the likes of Bale, Ramsey, Allen, who have been so important, but maybe just can't quite hit those heights anymore, at least not sort of game after game after game the way they used to be able to do. And then we have a lot of players who are coming through and have a lot of potential, but they're still developing, and they probably weren't ready for this tournament quite yet, to have that real big hit that they were looking for. So I guess the next few years are just about kind of bridging the gap between those two generations and trying to put the jigsaw pieces together to make an effective team that can compete against teams like Denmark, I guess. Matt, the managerial question, we won't get into the Ryan Giggs issue because obviously there's all sorts of legal ramifications involved there. But I mean, Rob Page is the man in the job at the moment. Would you like to see him keep the job on a longer term basis, or do you think we should be looking for somebody else, either Giggs if things, depending on how things turn out with his legal case, or look for somebody else with maybe a bit more experience at a higher level than Page?
Yeah, I'd like Page to stay involved because I think he's obviously well liked and well respected in the camp and stuff, and that's great. And I know people quite rightly pointed out some of his deficiencies, particularly in the Denmark game and stuff, and how he didn't react to Denmark's change of shape. But on the whole, I thought he orchestrated and oversaw a positive tournament. Like you said earlier, getting out to the group was the challenge, and it was a challenge that we achieved. And there was, things weren't. No one was calling for Page to be got rid of before the Denmark game. But yeah, I think we can look now and see what's out there and see if we can do better. Keep Page involved. you know my feelings on Giggs. Legal case aside, I'm not a fan of him as a manager, as a person or anything like that. He's just not my cup of tea whatsoever. And I think he's got all the charisma of a spoon beside anything else. So I just really am not enamored by the idea. I think when you go from Gary Speed, who really brought in a style and gave us an almost a platform where you just were really proud to follow this Welsh team again and follow them into battle, and everyone wanted to be involved and to play and to really, and he brought on that next kind of feel good factor. Then Chris Coleman, who literally encapsulated, despite being a massive Swans fan and being unashamedly so, encapsulated the passion and the belief of the whole nation, and Cardiff fans were even in big support of him as manager because of what he did. It's together stronger thing. That's where that was born and bred, and that's where you really felt that Wales fans, like in Euro 2016, could mingle with one another, club rivalries aside. It really felt like we were one nation and one team. So that was all great. And then I don't ever think we'll ever feel it under Giggs. So I would like us to move and try and get that feeling back of really, feeling that immense pride and joy about, everything that Wales stands for, because a little bit of the old stuff has crept back in over the last couple of years, and it's really annoying because how good it was in France.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's look a little bit at the tournament in a wider context. I mean, Wales are now out. Steve, who do you want to win the tournament, and who do you think is going to win the tournament?
Who do I want to win? I am not overly picky. I'm just desperate that England are not the team to win it, basically. Suppose if you pushed me, I'd quite like Belgium to win it. They're a nation that have never really won anything, and they're probably coming up towards the last chance for this team now, because a lot of them are getting on a bit. I know the likes of Lukaku and De Bruyne are still at their peak, but defensively especially, I mean, those players now are well into their 30s, so they if they're going to win something, it probably needs to be now. So yeah, I think it's been quite a good tournament, actually. I mean, we've seen, in the knockouts especially, we've seen a few shocks, haven't we? Nobody expected France to go out at this stage. I mean, with the squad they've got, it's incredible that they've gone out to Switzerland. The Czechs beating the Dutch, I think that was a little bit of a surprise, although maybe not the type of surprise that maybe it was being billed as, because I don't think Holland or the Netherlands, should say, are maybe as good as they once were. And when Wales played the Czechs, I thought they were a good side. So yeah, that was good as well. I think there's been a lot of good games, actually. I've enjoyed the tournament so far. Obviously, it's been disappointing that we haven't been able to go, but yeah, I certainly think it's been entertaining. And if you look at Monday night, especially where we had the Switzerland-France game and Spain and Croatia, we were truly spoilt, really, weren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it has kicked up a notch, hasn't it, in the knockout stages. I thought the group stages were maybe a little bit flat at times, maybe too many teams going through, and it was just a bit too easy for most teams to get through to the next round. Not enough jeopardy, I think, is the word people have used. But yeah, the knockout stages have just been fantastic so far. Absolutely amazing. What about you, Matt? Who are you backing, and who do you genuinely think is going to win it?
I echo a lot of what Steve said, to be honest with you. You have to say that England have a path, certainly through to the final, but remind you of the last Euros when they also had somewhat of a path, and they were delighted that they'd not won the group because it meant that they had an easier path to the final, and then obviously got embarrassed against little Iceland. So it's by no means a done deal with that, and there's always a sense of there being a bottle in there somewhere. Although, you look at the way that they're winning games, and they're keeping clean sheets, aren't they? And so you'd have to say, despite it being quite cautious and that they're getting the job done. Who I'd like to win would be, I think I agree with Steve. I'd like Belgium to win. it does feel like time is running out for that golden generation. There's such a small country. I can't imagine any time in our lifetime again are they going to be able to produce so many superstars at the same time. So this feels like one of their last chances to do it. And yeah, they've got a really good chance. You can never rule out someone like Spain, but I've not been impressed with them, generally speaking. And yeah, so I think it may be Belgium, and an absolutely worst case scenario is I'll just delete all my social media accounts if the other team win.
It's not going to happen, is it? It's not. It can't happen. It can't.
I would say to Steve. I said to Steve the other day, we were talking about their path to the final at Wembley, and Steve said if he could guarantee they'd lose, he'd take that now at a final. And I thought, if you could guarantee they'd lose, I'd take that before a single ball was kicked. Because if you watch them lose in a final, can you imagine how much they've talked about the Euros of years gone by where they got knocked out in the semis and the quarters and whatnot, and they bang on about it. Imagine they lost in a final. Oh, unbelievable. Well, it would be unbelievable. I would dine on that for 25 years.
I'm not as convinced as others that they are going to make the final. I think Denmark are going to give them a stiff test in the semis. Denmark are a really good team. I think they are dark horses to reach the final, and I think Denmark have performed better against Russia and Wales than England have against anybody else in this tournament. So I know England are going to be at home for that match. I mean, I think we can write off the quarterfinals. Ukraine look absolutely dead on their feet by the end of their game against Sweden. Add the injuries, etc. They're not going to cause England any problems. But that semi-final against Denmark could be interesting, and then probably one of Belgium or Italy probably in the final. You'd think. Yeah, I'd still say the odds are slightly against England to do it. I think. Well, I put a bet on Italy, so I'm hoping it's them that wins it. But Belgium too are looking very strong. But yeah, it's an open tournament, and anything could happen, as we've already seen. Let's leave the international scene and go back to club action, where the first thing we need to discuss is the future of our manager. Basically, there isn't that much to discuss after quite a lot of internet rumours over the past month or so. It seems as though Steve Cooper is going to be staying. The two jobs that he was being hotly linked to were Crystal Palace and Fulham. Crystal Palace have found a replacement for Roy Hodgson in Patrick Vieira. Very interesting to see how that goes. He didn't really do brilliantly in his last job at Nice. And that's not the easiest of jobs at Palace either. So that'll be very interesting. And the other one is the strange case of Fulham, where Scott Parker's left to go to Bournemouth. Not sure what's gone on there. But they look likely now to sign Marco Silva, which is a very interesting one from their point of view. Quite an ambitious signing, I would say. But Steve, the long and short of it is that in all likelihood, Steve Cooper's going to be staying with the Swans. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think you're right now. I can't really see him going anywhere. I don't think there's any other openings really. So I think it would have been best for everybody if he had moved on, if I'm honest. I mean, I think we were a bit lucky last season. I don't think the football was very good. And I think that was the big chance to go up, really. And obviously we didn't manage to do it. And it just feels to me a bit now like we need this like longer term plan of rebuilding. And the big issue I've got with Steve Cooper is the style of play. I mean, it is terrible. Like the amount of games I enjoyed last year, there were not a great deal of them. And I honestly think as we hopefully now return to some normality with normal crowds and everything quite soon, I just don't think the fan base are going to tolerate what we saw last season. And if we do, they're going to be letting him know. I think he got away with a lot because there was no fans. So, yeah, I think it would have been best for everybody if he had moved on. He's done a good job, obviously, 2 playoffs and not to be sniffed at. But I don't think that's going to continue. And I honestly think if we carry on playing the way that we do, he's going to find himself out of a job. And I think, honestly, the club were happy for him to go because you would think after a manager has taken us into a playoffs 2 years running, especially on a low budget, that they'd be putting out a statement saying, look, we're really happy with what he's done, we want him to sign a new contract, etc. There's been silence. And also Cooper himself hasn't said anything. You'd think he'd be saying, look at the job I've done here. I mean, I want to extend the relationship. I want a new contract and all this type of thing. Again, they've both been silent. So it feels a bit like there's an uneasy relationship there at the moment. And yeah, I'm not convinced that Cooper is going to see the season out, if I'm honest. But I suppose time will tell on that one.
I mean, Matt, what Steve was saying there doesn't that suggest, when he's saying, that fans wouldn't have stood for what went on last season, etc. Isn't that suggesting that we're all a bit spoilt, really, and a bit too demanding? Because let's face it, we finished fourth in the table, one of the highest points totals we've ever had in our history. Got to the playoff final where, okay, we were, comprehensively outclassed by Brentford, but I think the vast majority of neutrals looking at that situation would say that's been a really good season for Swansea.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that makes us spoilt, because if you ask me whether I enjoyed Potter's season or Cooper's seasons more, I would tell you Potter 100 times out of 100. And we obviously finished, just above mid-table with Potter. And I refer back to what I talk about every so often, which is when I put a poll out when we got relegated to the Premier League and asked whether or not we'd want an immediate return to the Premier League, any means possible, or a top half finish playing the Swansea way. And that option won the poll by an absolute landslide. I think we just want to enjoy our Saturday afternoons. And if that means you lose a few games because you're playing this, attacking football, but maybe you have a sucker punch. We were incredibly unlucky. We did have a little bit of a soft underbelly, but we were incredibly unlucky under Potter, and the sort of luck which we rarely saw with Cooper. You can't put it all down to luck, I know, but I mean, we did have a lot of games where I thought, how on earth have we contrived to lose that game? Because we were just a joy to watch, and I just want to feel that way. I want to feel again that we are a joy to watch. So spoilt in the sense of I want to enjoy the football, yeah, maybe, but not necessarily. I don't demand better than fourth place finishes. I don't demand us romp the league next year. All I want is to see players express themselves, enjoy themselves, and play with a smile on their faces. And too often last season, it was a chore. It was a chore to watch us win, lose, or draw. And can't argue with the results. I won't disagree with anything Steve says about it, because the results are there for everyone to see, and people look at it going, can't argue with him when he's got results. And I get that, but oh God, it was hard. It was hard to watch. It feels like, okay, we're going to win this game, but can I just skip to the end to see the celebrations at the end, not have to put up with the 95 minutes in between? I'd watch Swans last season on highlights only, and they would be very quick because there weren't that many of them. But, yes, maybe I'm spoiled because I just want to enjoy my football. But, I mean, people look for different things. Some people say it's a results business and it's a legitimate argument. But I say it's an entertainment industry, and you pay good money to get a season ticket or to watch it on a stream or whatever we've had to do. And ultimately, you don't want to be bored shitless.
Steve, I saw somebody say on Twitter the other day, better the devil that Steve Cooper.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
He's not, particularly, the football is not entertaining. Let's be honest. It can be, as Matt said, a chore to watch the Swans and the
makes my eyes bleed.
There we go. But he has got us to 2 top 6 finishes. We've never had to worry about relegation under him. He's always done a pretty consistent job of results wise. I mean, is there a risk that these people like you and Matt and others who say, do you know what, I wouldn't have minded if he'd left for either Fulham or Palace? Is there a risk that be careful what you wish for? You could get somebody in who's tried to play a bit more expansively, but doesn't get the results, and suddenly we're in a bit of trouble. Is that a risk that you would be willing to take, basically?
Yeah, it is, quite simply, because Yeah, you can say, obviously, you could always appoint someone that's not good enough for the job. But I mean, if you do your due diligence and everything like that, then there are people out there that can play the way that we want to play. There's, you look at someone like Russell Martin at MK Dons, for example, and his team had like the third highest possession in Europe last season, for example. And I know they did finish in mid-table, but I always think if you decide to play that way, like it does sometimes take a little bit of time to sort of come to fruition. So you do just have to be patient, but you do see the rewards of it in the end. I honestly believe if Graham Potter had stayed for another season, we really would have seen the rewards of what he was doing, because a lot of the home games at the end of that first season, they were just an absolute joy to watch. And I just think sometimes it takes time. I mean, I look at Ian Evatt, the Bolton manager, and they started really badly in League Two. But the philosophy then, as they became better at it, the style of play, in the end, they finished third and they went up. It just takes time sometimes. You've got to be patient. But at the same time, as long as I can see things going in the right direction, that's all I ask for. But yeah, if we were down the bottom, it would be a concern. But if we're in the middle, I do just think that's the way to go. And you will improve then over a period of time. Whereas I think what we have done, we sort of got a bit lucky, and we seem to have taken the minimal chances that we've created. But I don't think it's like sustainable in the longer term. And I always say as well, if you play bad football, you have to win. Because if you don't win, you have got nothing. So at least if you play good football, then you've always got that to fall back on, really.
And also to back up what Steve's saying there is, could you have seen, if we'd beaten Brentford at Wembley, could you have seen our style providing us with any sort of success in the Premier League? I think we were on a hide into nothing. Yes, everyone knows we're skint and we can't afford to go splashing big money, and Cooper didn't have the out-and-out striker he craved and stuff. But our style of play wasn't conducive to good football anyway. So if we got to the Premier League, I mean, just look at when we got there with Rodgers. It felt at the time that this is our moment. This is our, and we talked about this, Guto, just before the playoff final, if you recall, when we were talking about the lack of anticipation, perhaps because we felt like if we'd got the win against Brentford, we'd have shithoused it, and it didn't feel almost legitimate. Whereas at the time under Rodgers, it felt like, God, everything, the infrastructure, the football, the players, everything's in place. If we can just get over this last hurdle, this is the golden generation for Swansea, and this is the moment. And obviously, the history proves that. Whereas, irrespective of what happened against Brentford, I feel like we were in for 10 months of pain, financial security for the Swans, which would have been great, but ultimately almost certain relegation next year. And obviously, I believe that Cooper would have been out of a job by November because of how dismal it would have been. I still believe, by the way, that Cooper will be out of a job by November, but that's another conversation for another time.
It is interesting, though. I'm pretty fascinated by fans' opinions of this. I'm in the camp of, I guess I'm glad that Cooper's staying, because I think stability is underrated, and he has got us to 2 top 6 positions. He's got the results, even if it's not been good to watch, and especially as we're going through another kind of difficult summer. It's better. Let's not rock the boat too much, and it's best to keep him rather than having to go through another managerial search and start from scratch. Once again, even though I'm not entirely confident that he'll be able to build on what we did last season. I'll be totally honest. But having said that, if he had gone to either of those jobs, and I'm not certain how hotly he was being pursued by either of those, how much of a realistic contender he was for either of those jobs. But say he had left, I would not have been particularly upset, if I'm being totally honest. I think, and I think, speaking to a lot of fans, I think there are quite a lot of people who felt the same way. Probably didn't actively want him to go, but wouldn't have been too devastated if he had gone. That's, there are other fans out there, definitely a lot of fans out there who would have been gutted if he'd signed for Palace and or Fulham. And never pretend to speak on behalf of all fans on this podcast, but it is interesting to look at the kind of mix of emotions in response to the news that he probably will be staying for the coming season. Steve Cooper now, by the way, Swansea's longest serving manager since Roberto Martinez. If he defies Matt's prediction and lasts the next season, he will be our longest serving manager since John Hollins, which does tell you something about how frequently we change managers at this club. Moving on to somebody who unfortunately has left the Swans. No surprises here. Since our last podcast, it has been announced that Andre Ayew won't be coming back. Steve, like I said, no surprises, but how much of an impact do you think it's going to have on our preparations for next season, and how much what can we do to sort of mitigate that that blow?
It's going to be difficult, isn't it? I mean, he was by far our biggest goal threat, really. As you say, not a surprise that he's gone. I suppose we have to become maybe a bit of a more rounded side. I mean, you have to question now whether the formation that we were playing, especially the wing back one, whether that's going to maybe serve us as well now that Ayew was gone. So we maybe need to look at more of the 4-3-3 that we played more at the end of last season, or maybe a 4-2-3-1 type thing. With, I think the issue with Ayew was always where do you play him, really, but he has to play because of the, his abilities was a lot better than a lot of the other players that we had. So I think the more rounded team is probably where we need to look at, really, but it's going to be difficult. And I mean, we've lost our biggest goal threat, really, and let's be honest about it. Our goal threat wasn't that big either, was it? So to lose him on a free, not great. A bit concerning. I'm sure there'll be new arrivals shortly. There's been one already, hasn't there? But yeah, it's certainly not what we needed. But I think I'd be amazed if there was anybody out there that didn't see that one coming. I think it was pretty obvious that he was going to be off if we didn't go up.
Yeah, I mean, we all expected it as soon as we lost to Wembley, didn't we? I mean, Steve, stick with you for the time being. What do you think will be the legacy of his second spell at the Liberty?
It's a funny one, isn't it, with Andre Ayew? I mean, you look at it, he was obviously signed for a club record fee to keep us in the Prem, didn't score a single goal, we went down. And then he was shipped off on loan, we didn't see him, and you're thinking, what's going to happen now? They wanted to get rid of him again when he came back, but I think because we'd had money for other people and the offers on the table weren't great, we ended up keeping him. To be fair, he has done a decent job over the last couple of years, but the underlying truth is it was a bad signing. You can't look at it any other way. That signing has cost us about 30 million quid, and at the end of the day, it hasn't paid off. Like, you could argue we'd have got away with it if we'd won the playoff final and gone up. Then maybe we could have extended it. I'm sure we would have had to have dropped his wages, but he maybe would have considered then staying if we were in the Prem, and obviously even on that slightly less wage. So yeah, it's tough to criticise. It's not so much his fault, the money that was paid, but you can't say it was a successful signing. There's absolutely no way, is there?
That's my perspective. If I'm being honest, I still think he'll probably be remembered. Well, he'll be remembered for two things: for his contribution over the last two seasons, but also the overriding fact that it was still a really daft signing, which did not pay off in any way. Matt, how it's looking for positives out of the situation. I would say, like Steve said, we struggled to find a position for Ayew. I would also say that Ayew often kind of struggles to link up with teammates, but he never seems to be on the same wavelength as them. He he tries things which his teammates just don't read, etc. And his individual quality is phenomenal, but he doesn't always manage to get the best out of the players around him. Am I just clutching at straws when hoping that possibly now that he's gone, we'll actually see the team work together a bit better now that he isn't there, and that they'll actually have to find different partnerships?
I don't think so. I think you're spot on. I'll be honest with you. I think that even last season, you could not make the argument that Ayew was worth his wages at all. even if he got us promoted, it would have been a get out of jail free card, and that's it. We haven't had money's worth out of him. I guess he had moments of individual brilliance, and he was our main man, and I'll give him that. But as you say, his link-up play left wanting. Him and Jamal Lowe seemed allergic to passing to each other, and so that left us wanting a lot for the. When you're up front and you need that, we basically, when we got the ball to our strikers, they needed to be the one to have a shot because there was no pass and move between the two of them. So that was, a big issue, and obviously goals were at a premium anyway. So I'm not looking at it as a negative. It was a a noose around our neck for the last 3 years, having these enormous wages crippling us when we had to, we were letting in water fast and we needed to get rid of everything. And he was one we couldn't shift. So I thought last season was an opportunity to get out of jail, but I certainly wasn't looking at it as this will be a cracking. It'll turn out to be a cracking signing if we go up, because he essentially took the place of 4 players wages wise that we could have had and made our squad a lot stronger as a result. So it's in the whole. I'm not negative about it. I think his professionalism for coming back and applying himself and running himself into the ground so often for us was to be commended. But listen, there's a lot of things I would do for 80 grand a week, Guto, and I don't want to share him on this podcast. I think he's a guy that had a lot of money coming in, and in the end decided he would put in a shift for it. But we have got to be looking at this as we're better off financially and in terms of being able to build a bigger and better team as a result of his wages being released.
Well, if you do want to find out what Matt would do for 80 grand, you can contribute to the fans account. We have got one player in at least with the aim of replacing him, although maybe that's a little bit unfair to expect him to fill those massive boots. Kyle Joseph, Steve, 5 goals in 18 games for Wigan last season. We do love a young Scot at this club. We do love buying young Scottish under 19, under 21 internationals. I mean, like I said, 5 goals in 18 games for a Wigan team who were struggling throughout the season, basically at the foot of at the bottom end of League One. I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't seen anything of him, hadn't heard of him before we signed him. Do you have expectations based on what you've heard and read about him that he will play a big part this season?
As Manuel once said, I know nothing. What can you say, really? I mean, it's a youngster. He's highly rated. We've got to be patient. I don't think he's going to be first choice. I wouldn't have thought at this stage to maybe signing him for the year after, really. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that he'll spring a surprise on us and end up becoming more of a regular, but I don't see that at this stage. I mean, he wasn't a regular for Wigan, as those appearances suggest, really. So, we'll see. I think what we really need is to bring players in that are going to be ready to play straight away. I mean, we've lost quite a few players now, haven't we? So we need starters, is what I would say. I'm hoping that there's not going to be too many of those signings, to be honest. Nothing personal at all, but I really just think that we need to bring in players that are going to start. I mean, you're looking already now, aren't you? Obviously, Woodman has gone. Are we going to bring a keeper in? I know we've got 2, but at the same time, are either of them up to being number 1? It's up for debate. Guay, we've lost. We're not going to bring in anyone as good as him, I wouldn't have thought. I think it just isn't realistic. I mean, that's a tough one. Hourahan's gone. He wasn't brilliant at times, but where's the creativity from midfield going to come? We weren't really playing with wide men, but are we going to, and do we need to bring any in? Routledge obviously isn't going to play for certainly until the new year, I wouldn't have thought. So we're a man down in that situation. We need to bring in players that are going to start. That's the way that I'm looking at it now. We probably need a striker as well, don't we?
Well, one striker who does look likely to sign, Matt, is Joel Pirro, who has a little bit more experience than Kyle Joseph. He has played quite a number of games for PSV in the Dutch league, seems to have fallen out of favour there. It seemed apparently he's passed a medical with the Swans, and it seems like we're going to be spending money on him, which is a bit of a rarity for the Swans recently. Suggests that we're expecting him to be a big player for us. I mean, we've got our hopes up in the past for Dutch players joining the club who possibly haven't hit the heights that we were expecting. The last one came from PSV as well, and that was Luciano Narsing. Bit unfair to brandish the whole. We have also had some very good players from the Netherlands, of course, but it is one of those leagues you never really know what you're going to be getting. So is it a bit of a risk that we're spending cash at a time when we know money is tight at the club?
Yeah, and this plays into what we were chatting about just now with Andre. There's obviously a lot of cash that was tied up in just keeping him at the club, and this doesn't seem to be an insignificant amount of money either. There seems to be a decent amount of money being bandied about, rumored to be bandied about anyway for this. No doubt it'll come out as undisclosed, but yeah, like you said, really, we talked before we started recording that the Eredivisie is a mixed bag, and it really depends on how well you've scouted the player, because it's the player rather than how they've done in that league. When you look at the previous success stories and stuff like that, it's the player that tends to shine out of it, because we have had great players that have gone on to achieve great things from there, and we've had massively underwhelming signings from there. So I hope he's signed based on extensive scouting, and that's where I hope the likes of the the Andy Scott appointment will really come into fruition and stuff. And I want us to see now him start the legacy for us that he had built over many years for Brentford, and had that. Sorry, go on.
Steve said there a couple of the areas that he feels we need to look at and strengthen. What for you are the areas that should be a priority in this transfer window?
Well, look at this now, right? We're spending money on this Pirro guy. We got to hope he's a starter, because as for Kyle Joseph, he's young, inexperienced, not got many games. Jamal Lowe says that he's a player that knows where the back of the net is. Well, we got one of them. His name's Liam Cullen. He's young, he's inexperienced, but boy, do we know he knows where the back of the net is. And I feel like if he's not going to be a regular player this year, then he needs to desperately get a full year's football somewhere, because there's a player in there ready to score goals at whatever level he finds himself at. So, that is something he's got to look at. We've got a lot of youngsters, haven't we? When you look at Pirro, let me just quickly check. I think he's quite young, isn't he? He's like 20, 21. 21. So he's 21. You've got Whittaker, you've got Cullen. So your three strikers are very young. Jamal Lowe, I should expect now will move on to the wing, because I don't think he's ever really been a striker, as he gives it his all. But we have to get a striker that is going to be our focal point, that he's going to be playing every week. We can't just gamble on youngsters and we hope one of them starts turning into a gem. So that's a priority, because we just don't have it. Secondly, creativity. Absolutely need creativity in the team. It was something that was glaringly obvious. Whether it's Steve Cooper or any other manager, we're going to struggle to create with these set of players. We just don't have it in the team. You've got Matt Grimes, you've got Corey Smith, you've got Jay Fulton. There ain't a lot of assists in that team. So you need to really look at that area of the pitch as well. Hourihane was a bit of a flop, if you ask me, but that was the intention there of plugging that gap. And so we're going to have to replace Mark Gahey, that's obvious. But we're not like threadbare at the back, so I wouldn't say necessarily that we need a starter in there, but we certainly need an option. And I'm up for giving Stephen Bender the number 1 shirt. I know he's been out for a decent length of time now, injury-wise, but that's up for the club to decide if they think he's ready. But he had a good year at Swindon. And I feel like if he doesn't get regular game time for us soon, he will look to move because he's had it now. And I feel like players, once they start getting first team football, they don't want to go back to being, shoved in reserve team football anymore. So it may be one of our last chance to show faith in him, and go from there, because that really defines the spine of the team. Then, if we get those positions sorted, who knows? Pirot may be the man. He may be the man. Like I say, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag from Holland, so we'll see.
We have been linked with one or two other players. Liam Walsh, who's been released by Bristol City. Thomas Henry, who's scored quite a few goals in Belgium. But neither of those are looking particularly concrete at the moment. Could change, obviously, but at the moment, I think that's just sort of transfer speculation. We won't go too much into that. One thing we do know for sure is that not only do the Swans have a new kit, they also have a new badge. And do you know what? Last season, I remember the new kits got a sort of universally positive response when they were first released. I think it's fair to say this year's response surpasses that even. I mean, the club have nailed this, haven't they, Steve?
Yeah, they have. I'm very impressed. I've got to be honest. The new badge is like proper old school. I think everyone, on the whole seems to approve of it. And I like the home shirt. I always think a black away shirt is best for us. I mean, a Swan is either black or white. It always just seemed to work well. Last year's away kit, I would like to repeat, was absolutely horrendous. Arguably the worst Swans kit of all time.
I know, like, taste is subjective, etc. But if you like that kit, I have no words for you. I'm sorry, your taste is wrong. It's wrong.
My mate said it was aimed at women and kids.
Possibly. I thought it was hideous, I'll be honest. Plus,
it was terrible. It was. I'd expect that to be sold on a shit shirt website.
It didn't even function as an away kit either, because it was too similar to if we were playing against a team in white, you couldn't tell which team was which. I mean, I remember the opening game against Preston. I genuinely struggled to work out which players were Swans and which players were Preston players. It was functionally awful, and in terms of taste and just far be it for me to discuss fashion, but fashion wise, it was pretty hideous, and I'm hoping that we've learned a lesson from that.
Yeah, my cousin wore it to the playoff final. Said, "Oh, I have to buy it. It was only a tenner." I was like, "If you paid me a tenner, I still wouldn't wear it. Like, it is that bad." So yeah, they've big improvement this year. That for the black away shirt, I think. No complaints from me.
Are you going to be buying one of them?
Possibly. I'll have a think. I've just bought a couple of retro ones over the last couple of months, so yeah, I don't know if I'm going to buy another one, but I'll think about it. Or I might just be one of those cheapskates that waits until the end of the season and gets it for a tenner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what about you, Matt? Are you getting one? And your kids are getting to the age now where they're going to start wanting football kits. Are they going to be kitted out in retro Swan shirts?
As long as they don't do, as long as they don't change the kit. I haven't seen what the child range is like, but if they're like exactly the same as the adults one, then definitely, because the away kit in particular, I think is stunning. I do think even the zigzags and whatnot on it is just lovely, and the badge is just, it's Swansea, isn't it? There's copper in there as well, which obviously goes back with the Swans history and stuff. Everything about it was one of those things you go, I know it's one that you've created this badge now as an anniversary treat or whatever, but can we keep it? Because this, I think everyone agrees, is much better than our current badge or our previous badge. So I don't see that we should actually go back to it at the end of the season. It's been a masterstroke, isn't it? Wherever this design has come to fruition, with Joma or whatnot, it's been universally approved by the Swans faithful. So white home, black away is always a winner.
Yeah, whoever in the Swans marketing department came up with this one, pat on the back. They've done brilliantly. I mean, Steve, where do you think this ranks among sort of Swans kits of your time, all time? And which one is your favourite over the years, home or away?
It's a good question, isn't it? I think this is definitely in the top 5, probably top 5 for home and top 5 for away. So That's they're quite high compliments. The number ones for me are actually both from the same season. So it's the 2003-4 where so the away shirt was the legendary first black one we've had. That's never going to get better, I don't think. The home one was the one where there was like a black trim and there was a collar, and on the back of the collar it said the Swans. That for me was, I think that's the best Swans kit since I've been going down there.
I think that away kit was possibly my first Swans kit. It was the baggiest piece of clothing I've ever worn.
Yeah, I've still got it now, and it's great.
It still fits you, probably, does it?
Yeah.
I mean, they were massive. That was at that stage where football shirts went from being like parachutes to being skin tight. You know, it was around about that era that it started the transition. But those shirts were definitely like before that switch was made with the Swans. I mean, Matt, I agree with Steve. I think those shirts from that season are right up there. I can just see Lee Trundle wearing them now. It's and brings back great memories. I mean, for you, but for your favourite shirt from your time watching the Swans, and where does this one? How does this one compare?
Yeah, I completely agree with Steve, and thinking back to that sort of era as well. You know, you got your Trundles and your Paul Connors and whatnot with your collars, your black collars, white shirt and stuff like that. And maybe there's a bit of nostalgia in there, but I do think Swans should just be in white and black and not get too fancy about it. And the argument of what short color and sock color we should wear is another one for people. But I think, generally speaking, I think if you go with white shirts home, black shirts away, and I do think, this one is a contender because of everything when you put it in there, and you got the badge as well, and the shirts are really nice to look at, and can't wait to see them in person. But they could be up there. You could be looking back in a few years' time and say the shirt of 21-22 is one of the best we've had in our lifetime, hopefully.
Do you know when clubs do this and bring that out like kind of commemorative shirts or to mark some kind of anniversary, they're always spot on, aren't they? Like we did it for our centenary year with the kind of gold trim, which was absolutely stunning. The Real Madrid kit, people, a lot of fans called it. But I remember Arsenal the season they let Highbury, their home kit, like the whole burgundy one, was absolutely stunning. I think Southampton brought one out a couple of years back with like a sash, which was really nice as well. Like there's always something about like a commemorative shirt. Clubs very rarely miss the mark where they do this. They do tend to get it right, and they've got it right with this one. Let's look ahead as well to the season now. I know it's a month away, but the fixtures have been announced. And Steve, we start the season away at Blackburn. The big question, are we as Swansea fans going to be there in attendance? What do you think?
I think we will be there. And I'm quite pleased that it's a Blackburn away, because I always say with an opening day that what I want is an away game that isn't usually appealing, that is usually a little bit further than a lot of people want to go, but then more people go because it's the opening day, they put the effort in. And this one should be one where a lot more people go, because obviously it's been such a long time. So it's a big away end. I think we're going to take quite a lot up there. I honestly, as things stand, I think England's going to be normal. So I think we will be there. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Swans home games are restricted. That's my gut instinct at the moment. So, yeah, I'm hopeful for Blackburn that we'll be there. And if we are, bring it on, because I think everyone's going to be massively up for it. So let's keep our fingers crossed over the next few weeks that things pan out as in England as expected, and then things lift. And then I think if that happens and this goes well, Wales will not be far behind. So, yeah, I think we will be at Blackburn. That's my opinion. I certainly hope I'm right.
That away end in Blackburn, Matt, holds a lot of people. I think it holds around about 5,000 people. So
7,000 if you get the upper and the lower.
Oh, I mean, even when you look at that, even if they do keep social distancing and make sure that they space people out, there's still a potential there for a good away following, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I've grown into be a grumpy old cynic, and I'll believe it when I see it. I hope that Steve is bang on with it, because there has to be a time. There has to be a time when you say, "Look, we've done what we can do here. We've people have been vaccinated, and we've got low hospitalization numbers now, which proves that even though cases are rising, that people aren't getting ill or seriously ill. So I think there's got to be a cut-off point where you say, now the benefits of allowing people to mingle again far outweigh the risks. And to me, that this is the time. But then, they said it in June. So right up until a few days before we were supposed to open everything up, they pulled the plug on it. So like I say, I won't hold my breath on it. But if Steve's right, then I can see us, and then there's no social distancing. Then there's no telling how many people will want to go there, because especially because Wales certainly won't be. I don't think Wales will be anything like the position that England will be in. So once word gets about, then a lot of people will want tickets to that game. Just the opportunity to go back and feel like you're at a football match again. So yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great, and I'm sure it'll be well attended. And let's hope there's not a need for social distancing and mask wearing if you dare to stand up or sit down or whatever you have to do these days, and we can get back to some sense of enjoyment and normality.
As if you needed any kind of excuse to get excited for the return of football and fans being allowed in for regular league matches. Two of Swansea's opening 4 games have been switched due to TV, and one of them sees our first home game of the season against Sheffield United shifted to 8 p.m. on a Saturday night. I mean, that's got the potential, Steve, for a good old day, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it has. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who are going to be in too bad a state, if I'm honest with you. If things are normal by then, with it being 8 o'clock, it's probably a little bit too late. But I suppose it's not a bad kick-off time, is it, in that sense? I think if you're away from home, that's really not great, if you're honest. But if you're at home, it's quite a decent one. So yeah, I can see a lot of drunken people staggering around if things are normal by then. But debatable in Wales whether we'll be at the full crowd part, I think.
I'll be honest, after a year and a half in a pandemic, I think 2 pints will be enough to floor me. Matt, the other game that's changed is the away game at Bristol City. Not quite as good, changed to 7:45 on a Friday night. But, I mean, again, if there are away fans allowed into that match, that would be a fantastic occasion, wouldn't it?
Yeah, don't worry about it. Steve's planned like 8 trips for the start of the season. I genuinely think he's going to bankrupt me and use up all my annual leave from work, because I think he's got every possible game, everything covered from now until about November, to be honest with you. I was just saying to him earlier on, I've got no chance I can do half of these, but keep me involved in all the plans, because some of them I'm going to have to pick and choose for, and I'll do that accordingly. But it's going to be if you're going up to Bristol and it's 7:45 on a Friday night, you may find yourself booking a hotel and making a night of it, or making a weekender of it, whatever, and seeing where it goes from there. But I think anything really, isn't it? If we can get there and we can go there and it not be like all social distance and stuff, then you're going to have a good time. There's no other way about it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing at the moment is that we just get fans back in and just get things back to normal. It's been so long since we saw full crowds in matches, and that's one of the things we have seen in some of these Euros matches is what a difference it makes to the occasion when you do have a full house there, and when you do see limbs, as people say, just bouncing around the stands. It's something that we've missed so badly. Just for anybody who hasn't seen the fixtures, I mean, our opening 6 games are Blackburn away, Sheffield United at home, Stoke City home, Bristol City away, Preston North End away, and then Hull City home. Not sure how much you can read into those fixtures at this stage. We're still a month to go to the season, but there we go. The season ends for the Swans at home against QPR, and the two most important fixtures, the two of the first ones that anybody ever looks at, the Cardiff City games. One of them will be on October 16th. That's the home one at the Liberty. And the away one is April 2nd. Steve, any other fixtures on that list that you always keep an eye out for when they come out? And are there any ones in this year's fixture that look particularly appealing?
Not massively, if I'm honest. I mean, I think we're all just happy just to go to any of them. I think obviously Cardiff stands out, doesn't it? As it always does and always will if it's on the list. I mean, there's not like a Leeds in there or something like that, or a Newcastle. So, I mean, there's not like that other one that takes my attention. A little bit disappointed with the London ones again. I think Fulham's on a midweek. I think QPR is the weekend before Christmas, and Millwall's on Boxing Day. I mean, that's really not great. It's always nice to have some decent London ones, but I feel like they're not great, if I'm honest with you. I can't see a great deal others like stand out. I think I'm just looking at those first few really and just thinking, bring it on.
Absolutely, Matt. And any other ones there for you that stand out that
you love? Steve's definitely going to Middlesbrough. Well, he's not going to Middlesbrough. He's going to Newcastle, and that's a weekender. That's a definite weekender for a start. Any excuse to go up to Newcastle, I think. It doesn't even have to be. Do you know what? I'd go to Newcastle if we were playing Bristol City, to be honest with you, because it doesn't really need an excuse to go up there and make a weekend of it. It's just a great place, isn't it? So, yeah. He's underplayed that a bit, Guto. I know he's keen on the Middlesbrough game, even though it's going to be absolutely.
I just think I'm cursing Middlesbrough because it's the one ground I've never been to, and obviously I was meant to go, and then we went into a lockdown. So
you jinxed it.
Yeah, it's weird because Middlesbrough's eluded me for years. It's like the one ground in like the top two divisions that I've not been to, and it's been like that for ages. I've been to pretty much everywhere else, but yeah, basically. But I suppose the other one is Blackpool. That's one to look forward to, isn't it?
That's March 12th. Unlikely to be short weather, you'd think. But still.
Yeah, that's slightly annoying. I was hoping Blackpool might be more later in the season or at the start, but Blackburn and Preston are not far from Blackpool. So, yeah, it's not like it's ruled out.
No, absolutely not. But you know what? It's great that we can actually look ahead to fixtures and actually kind of dream about getting back to them in person and you're in that atmosphere again. I mean, wow, how we have missed it. Well, hopefully we're not just getting overexcited here, and hopefully we will be able to get back to watching Swansea games and singing full pelt for 90 minutes once again. Thank you very much for joining us again for this podcast. It's been a bit of a mixed one, really. We've discussed a bit of everything, but hope you've enjoyed it. We will probably be another couple of weeks before we record another one, unless there is some major breaking news in the meantime. But until then, thank you very much for listening.